Hey there, loom knitters. So today I'm going to show you how to do a version of a round loom cast off that is typically used when you are making hats and beanies. Some of the things you are going to need is, of course, your loom with your project already knitted. You will also need your skein of yarn, a needle tool, a pair of scissors, and also a plastic threading needle or a metal one. Now we are going to proceed assuming that you have knitted your very last row and you're ready to cast off. We need to make sure you have enough working yarn to finish. So what we are going to do is wrap your working yarn 2 times around your loom. Once you have done that, you're going to take your scissors and you're just going to cut off at that extra space, and now you are no longer attached to the skein. Now, admittedly, this is a lot of extra yarn for the end of your project. However, there's nothing worse than not having enough yarn to finish your project. So we always want to make sure we have extra. Now we're going to take that working yarn and begin on the first peg casting off. Now the working yarn is going to be under the loop on the peg. Now also I'd like to point out, make sure that all of your loops are at the top of each peg so you can finish this cast off. Now the yarn is going to be under the loop, and you're going to take your needle tool and place it above the loop on the top, pull it out a little bit, and you're going to bring that up, that working thread up through and create a loop. Now you're just going to pull it until the end of the yarn comes through, and now you are secure that you can remove that loop off of that peg and you have casted off a peg 1. You're going to move to peg number 2 and you're going to do the same thing. And this is very similar to a purl stitch if you're familiar with how that's done. So take your needle tool, you're going to put it on the top of the loop, pull your loop out a little bit so you can scoop up that working yarn up through that top loop on the peg, and then you're just going to pull it until the end of the yarn comes through, and now you're safe to remove your loop on the peg from the peg. And you will move on to peg 3. Needle tool from the top of that loop, you're going to scoop up your working yarn, pull it all the way through. Now you have cast it off once you pull the loop off of the peg. You will continue this for every single peg until you get to the very last peg on your loom. So now I'm just going to allow this to happen in real time for a couple more pegs, and then we'll speed it up so I can help you end the project. And don't forget, if you like this tutorial, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe as well, so that way you are in the know on my latest tutorials for beginner loom knitters. Now here we are with our remaining 2 pegs, and you're just going to continue doing the same thing you have been on this last peg. Remember, you are just inserting your needle through the top loop and pulling the working yarn the whole way through. And once that is complete, you will pull it completely off of your loom and you can set your loom aside. Now this is what the top of your project is going to look like right now. Mine just looks like a tube. I have that bottom end rolled because I have not finished it. This is just a practice piece, which I recommend you doing as well. Now you take that working yarn and you're going to place it into the middle, and you're going to turn it inside out. You want the wrong side of the yarn to be facing out. You're going to pull that working yarn to cinch the top of it, You're going to pull it kind of tight. Make sure you don't pull it too tight because sometimes your yarn can rip and then you're going to have to find a way to tie a new piece of yarn on or start all over. So here I just keep tightening it a little bit, and this is where you're going to need your little knitting needle. I prefer to use the metal ones, but you can use the plastic ones that have come with your kits, your knitting loom kits. They will work just fine. Now I was having a little bit of trouble threading my needle, but I just decided to leave it in the video to show you that everybody has trouble. Even if you've been doing this for a couple years, you can still have a difficult time. So yeah, that's what's happening here. And what I have to end up doing is, because the end of the yarn gets so frayed, I have to grab my scissors and cut the end of it to try again. So here you'll see that I eventually end up getting my needle threaded, and the point of using this needle and thread is to be able to finish it off. And typically when you are creating this cinch at the top of a hat, you can't get it tight enough by just pulling it, and there will be a hole that remains at the top. So we want to make sure that we get that closed. So what you're going to do is you're going to go around in each thread around the top, and it doesn't have to be exact, and you're just going to thread it under, and then you're going to tug on your yarn a little bit, and you're just going to go around in that top circle, threading the yarn through those top threads and just pulling a little bit tighter, just so your circle is pulled a little bit tighter and you don't have a hole at the top of your project. Now once I get around the whole circle, then what I begin doing is once I get around back to where I started, then I'm going to go through one more time, but now I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to work across, and see, you can already see that the hole, there's not one there. So now I want to be able to secure the top. So I'm going to take this working yarn, and where the yarn is, I'm going to go across from it and make a thread, create that loop, and now I'm just going to do a little tie. So I'm going under that loop and I'm going to pull it as tight as I can without breaking the yarn. And then I'm going to go about a quarter of a way on right beside that, and I'm going to do a knot again. I'm going to do another knot like that. So when I pull it tight, that it creates a knot that it's going to stick in place. Then I'm going to go across from that, under a thread, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go under the thread, and then I'm going to bring my needle through that loop so I can create one more knot. And I'm comfortable with leaving it at this point, but if you feel like you need another knot or two, go ahead. I'm going to cut it pretty close to the end there, and it's pretty snug. And if this were a full-size project, I would almost be ready to wear this hat. Obviously, this is about a size for a doll, and it's not finished. It's just a practice project, but that is how the cinch top looks. Now, of course, this is not a finished project. This is just a practice run, and I definitely recommend that when you start making anything, if this is your first time, do not start out on a project. Simply start out practicing the technique and the skill before you hop into a project. You are going to save yourself a lot of time and frustration of unraveling or missing steps or winding your pegs too tight when you're making these things. So just practice this maybe once or twice just to get familiar with the process before you begin your hat. My next tutorial is actually going to be a beginner hat with a flipped brim and the cinch top. It's so easy, and once you figured out how to do the ewrap, the cast on, and the cinch top, you're ready to put it all together and make a hat for yourself or someone you love. See you guys soon.